Settle into a comfortable position. Allow the day to loosen its hold, breath by breath. You don't need to follow every word. Just let the sound of this story be with you. Sleep can arrive whenever it wishes. Tonight's story is The Felt Keeper, Chapter 1. The village of gray houses. There is a valley in Kyrgyzstan where the mountains touch the sky. The peaks are white with snow that never melts. They stand like ancient guardians, watching over the land below. In the summer, the snow catches the light of the rising sun and turns to gold. In the winter, it glows blue beneath the moon. Below these mountains, where the land softens into rolling hills covered in grass the color of honey, there is a village. It is a small village, a quiet village, the kind of village where time moves differently than it does in the rest of the world. The village is called Kizil II. In the old language, this means Red Hill, named for the way the evening sun paints the slopes a deep and lovely red as it sets behind the western peaks. In Kizil II, the houses are made of whitewashed mud and timber. Their roofs are flat, designed to hold the heavy snows of winter. Their windows are small, designed to keep out the cold wind that sweeps down from the mountains. But the houses are not what Kizil II is known for. Kizil II is known for felt. Keys, the people call it. The word sounds like what it is. Keys. Say it slowly. Let it roll across your tongue like wool being rolled across wet grass. Keys. Felt. For centuries, the people of this valley have made felt. They have made it the same way their grandmothers made it, and their grandmothers before them, stretching back through time to a past so distant that no one can remember when it began. The felt of Kizil II is not like other felt. It is thick and strong and warm. It can keep out the fiercest cold of the mountain winter. It can protect against the burning sun of the summer steppe. It is waterproof and windproof and almost indestructible. And most importantly, it is beautiful. The women of Kizil II decorate their felt with patterns that have been passed down through generations, spirals and waves, mountains and rivers, the horns of the Argali sheep that graze on the high slopes, the wings of the eagles that circle above the peaks. These patterns are not just decoration. They are stories. They are prayers. They are maps of a world that exists between the seen and the unseen, between the land of the living and the land of the spirits. Every piece of felt that comes from Kizil II carries these stories within it. Every carpet and every wall hanging and every covering for the round felt houses that the Kyrgyz call baz. The gray houses, the yurts, and at the center of this ancient craft, at the heart of Kizil II's tradition, there lives a woman named Aysulu. Her name means moonflower in the old language. She was born on a night when the full moon hung so low over the mountains that it seemed to touch the snow on the highest peaks. Her mother saw this moon through the window of their home as she held her newborn daughter, and she knew at once what the child must be called. Aysulu is 71 years old now. Her hair is white as the mountain snow, worn in 2 long braids that fall past her shoulders. Her face is lined with the marks of a life lived, mostly outdoors, in sun and wind and rain. Her eyes are dark brown, almost black, and they hold a depth that comes from seeing things that most people never see. Her hands are remarkable. They are strong hands, capable hands, the hands of someone who has worked with them every day of her life. Her fingers are stained from years of working with natural dyes: indigo blue, madder red, walnut brown. The colors have become part of her skin, permanent reminders of her craft. Aisulu lives in a small house at the edge of Kaisel 2, where the village gives way to the open grassland. From her door, she can see the mountains in every direction. She can see the sheep grazing on the hillsides. She can see the eagles circling high above. She has lived alone in this house for 12 years now, since her husband Balat passed away. They had 43 years together, 43 years of making felt side by side, 43 years of watching the seasons turn and the snow come and go on the mountains. She misses him every day, but she is not lonely. She has her work. She has her sheep. She has her memories. And she has the felt. The felt is always there, always waiting, always ready to be made. It is a comfort to her, the familiar rhythm of the work, the washing of the wool, the carding, the laying out, the rolling, the pressing, the decorating. Each step follows the last, as it has for centuries, as it will for centuries more. Or so Aisulu hopes, because Aisulu is the last of her kind, the last true felt keeper of Kaisel 2, the last one who knows all the old patterns, all the old techniques, all the old prayers that must be said as the wool is transformed into felt. There are others in the village who make felt, of course, but they use modern methods, modern tools. They make felt for the tourists who sometimes come to see the old ways. They make felt that is good enough, but not quite right. Only Aisulu still makes felt the way it has always been made. Only Aisulu still knows the secrets that cannot be written down, that can only be passed from hand to hand, from heart to heart. And Aisulu is growing old. She thinks about this sometimes, in the quiet hours of the evening, when the light is fading and the mountains are turning purple in the dusk. She thinks about what will happen when she is gone. She thinks about the knowledge that will disappear with her. But tonight, she does not think about these things. Tonight, she simply sits by her window and watches the last light fade from the sky. The stars are beginning to appear one by one, like sheep being counted before sleep. The fire in her stove crackles softly. The kettle sings its quiet song. Outside, an owl calls once, twice, then falls silent. Aisulu closes her eyes and breathes deeply. The air smells of wood smoke and wool, and the clean cold scent of the mountains. This is home. This is peace. This is enough. For now, it is enough. Chapter 2. The way of wool morning comes to Kaisel 2 with the sound of sheep. They call to each other across the hillsides, their voices rising and falling like a song without words. Bleat and bleat and bleat, a chorus that has echoed through these mountains since before there were villages. Since before there were people, since the first wild ancestors of these sheep roamed free across the endless steppe, Aisulu wakes to this sound, as she has woken every morning of her life. Her eyes open slowly, adjusting to the pale gray light that filters through her small window. The fire in her stove has burned low during the night, but the embers still glow red, still give off their gentle heat. She rises slowly. Her body is stiff from sleep, from age, from the thousand small complaints that come with 7 decades of living. But once she is upright, once she has stretched her arms and bent her knees and rolled her shoulders, she feels better. Ready for another day. Her morning routine is simple and unchanging. She stirs the fire and adds more fuel. She fills the kettle and sets it to boil. She washes her face in cold water from the basin by the door. She braids her hair, the same 2 long braids she has worn since childhood. The braids have changed color over the years, from black to gray to white, but the style has never changed. It is who she is. It is how her mother wore her hair, and her grandmother, and all the women of her family going back through time. When the kettle boils, she makes tea. Strong black tea with mare's milk and a pinch of salt. This is the tea of the Kyrgyz, the tea of the nomads, the tea that has warmed the hands and hearts of generations. She drinks her tea slowly, sitting by the window, watching the light grow stronger on the mountains. The peaks are catching the sun now, turning from gray to gold to white. The sheep are moving across the slopes, following their ancient paths to the best grazing grounds. Today is a good day for felt. Aisulu can tell by the quality of the air, by the angle of the light, by 1,000 small signs that most people would never notice. The humidity is right. The temperature is right. The wind is gentle but steady, perfect for drying. Today, she will begin a new carpet. She finishes her tea and wraps herself in her heavy woolen shawl. She steps outside into the morning air. It is cold, cold enough to see her breath, but she does not mind the cold. She has never minded the cold. The cold is simply part of life in the mountains. Her workshop is a separate building, a few steps from her house. It is larger than her living quarters because the work of making felt requires space. The building is old, built by her husband's grandfather, but it is solid and well maintained. Inside, the workshop smells of wool. It is a rich smell, a living smell. The smell of sheep and lanolin and the grassy hillsides where the flocks graze. Aisulu loves this smell. It is the smell of her life's work, the smell of her ancestors, the smell of home. The wool is stored in large burlap sacks along one wall. There are many sacks, each containing wool of a different color. The natural colors of the sheep range from creamy white to warm brown to deep charcoal gray. These are supplemented by wool that has been dyed using traditional methods. The reds and blues and yellows and greens that will become the patterns on the finished felt. But today, Aisulu will begin with undyed wool. The base of any felt carpet must be made from natural wool, the stronger the better. The dyed wool will come later, when it is time to add the patterns. She opens one of the sacks and reaches inside. The wool is soft and springy beneath her fingers. She pulls out a handful and holds it up to the light. It is good wool, clean wool, wool from sheep that have grazed on the high mountain pastures where the grass is rich with minerals. She can tell where wool comes from just by touching it. She can tell what the sheep ate, where they grazed, what season the wool was sheared. This knowledge is in her fingers, in her bones, passed down through generations of felt keepers who learned to read wool the way others learn to read books. The first step in making felt is carding. This is the process of untangling the wool fibers, straightening them, preparing them to become something new. Aizulu has 2 wooden paddles studded with fine metal teeth. These are her carding combs, worn smooth from decades of use, their handles polished by her hands. She sits on her low stool and begins to work. The motion is simple and rhythmic. Place a handful of wool on one paddle. Draw the other paddle across it, catching the fibers in the teeth. Pull them through, separating and aligning. Repeat, repeat, repeat. It is meditative work, the kind of work that occupies the hands but frees the mind. As Aisulu cards the wool, her thoughts wander. She thinks of her mother, who taught her to card when she was just a small child, barely old enough to hold the paddles. She thinks of her grandmother, whose hands were so strong and sure that she could card a whole fleece in a single morning. She thinks of all the women who came before, stretching back through time, all of them sitting just as she sits now, making the same motions, doing the same work. The wool transforms beneath her hands. What was tangled becomes smooth. What was matted becomes fluffy. What was raw becomes ready. This is the first magic of felt, the transformation of chaos into order, creation of potential from nothing. By the time the sun is fully risen, Aishulu has carded enough wool for the base of her carpet. It lies in soft piles around her, clouds of cream-colored fiber waiting for the next step. She rises from her stool and stretches. Her back aches slightly from the work, but it is a familiar ache, almost a comfort. She walks to the door of her workshop and looks out at the mountains. The light has changed while she was working. The gold has faded to white. The shadows have shortened. The sheep have moved to new grazing grounds, their shapes small against the vast green hillsides. She breathes deeply. The air is warming now, but it still carries the clean, cold scent of snow from the peaks above. Good, she thinks. This is good. She turns back to her work. There is much more to do. The wool is ready. It must become felt. Chapter 3. It is the changing of one thing into another, the creation of something new from something old. It requires skill and patience and a deep understanding of how fibers behave when they are wet and warm and pressed together. Aisulu knows this alchemy better than anyone alive. She learned it from her mother, who learned it from her mother, who learned it from hers. The knowledge stretches back through time like the wool fibers themselves, interlocking and interweaving, creating something strong from many individual threads. The first step is to lay out the wool. On the floor of her workshop, Aisulu has spread a large mat made of woven reeds. This mat is called a chi, and it has been used for felt making in Kyrgyzstan for as long as anyone can remember. The reeds are hollow and flexible, perfect for rolling the wool once it has been wetted. She begins to arrange the carded wool on the mat, spreading it in thin, even layers. The layers must overlap, like scales on a fish or tiles on a roof. If there are gaps, the finished felt will have weak spots. If the layers are too thick, the felt will not bond properly. This is the art of it. The knowing exactly how much is enough, how much is too much. This knowledge cannot be taught in words. It can only be learned through years of practice, through the wisdom that comes from making the same thing over and over until your hands know what to do without being told. Aisulu works slowly and carefully. She does not rush. Rushing leads to mistakes, and mistakes in the foundation will carry through to the finished piece. Better to take the time now to get it right from the beginning. The wool builds up on the mat, layer by layer, white upon white upon white. It looks like a cloud that has been caught and pinned to the ground, soft and billowy and full of air. When the base layer is complete, Aisulu stands back and studies it with a critical eye. She adjusts a thin spot here, smooths a wrinkle there. She runs her hands over the surface, feeling for any inconsistencies. Satisfied, she moves to the next step. Now comes the water. Aisulu has 2 large pots heating on her stove. The water in these pots is not plain water. It is soap water, made by dissolving chunks of harsh brown soap in the heated liquid. This soap is made in the village according to an old recipe, using animal fat and wood ash. It smells sharp and clean, like the mountains after rain. She carries the pots carefully to her workshop, steam rising from the surface. The water must be hot, but not too hot. Hot enough to help the wool fibers open and tangle together. Not so hot that it will scald. Using a wooden ladle, she begins to sprinkle the hot soap water over the laid out wool. The wool drinks it in, darkening from white to cream, settling and compacting as the water soaks through. She adds more water and more, until the wool is completely saturated, until every fiber is wet and warm and ready to be transformed. Now comes the rolling. Aisulu rolls the reed mat tightly around the wet wool, creating a large cylinder. She ties it in place with ropes made of horsehair, securing it so that it will not come apart during the next stage. And then she begins to roll. This is the most physical part of the work, the most demanding, the part that would exhaust someone who has not spent a lifetime building strength through labor. She places the rolled bundle on the floor and kneels beside it. She places her hands on the bundle and pushes, rolling it away from her. Then she pulls it back. The motion is like the motion of waves on the shore. like the motion of wind through grass, like the motion of breathing, in and out, endlessly repeating. Inside the bundle, the wool fibers are moving. They are tangling together, interlocking, bonding. The heat and the moisture and the pressure are doing their work, transforming loose fibers into solid fabric. Isulu counts as she rolls. She has always counted, since she was a young girl learning this craft at her mother's side. The counting helps her keep rhythm. The counting helps her know when she has rolled enough. 100, 200, 300. Her arms are strong. Her back is straight. Her breathing is steady and deep. 400, 600. The repetition is hypnotic. The same motion over and over until it becomes as automatic as breathing, until the mind empties of thought and there is only the motion, only the counting, only the ancient rhythm of the work. 700. By the time she reaches 1000, the first stage is complete. She unties the ropes and unrolls the mat. The wool has changed. It is no longer loose and fluffy. It has begun to mat together, to take on the first suggestion of solidity. But it is not felt yet. Not truly. It requires more rolling, more pressing, more transformation. She adds more hot water. She rolls the bundle again, from a different angle this time. Another 1000 rolls, then she adds more water and rolls again, and again, and again. The work takes hours. By the time the sun has moved halfway across the sky, Aizulu has rolled her bundle thousands of times. Her arms ache, her back aches, her shoulders ache. But the felt is coming together. Each time she unrolls the mat, she can see the progress. The fibers are tangling more tightly. The surface is becoming smoother. The thickness is becoming more even. This is the second magic of felt, the way that thousands of separate fibers can become one solid sheet. The way that persistence and pressure can create something permanent from something temporary. Aisulu thinks of this as she works. She thinks of how the fibers are like the people of her village. Separate, they are weak. Together, they are strong. The community holds itself together the same way felt holds itself together, through connection and interlocking and mutual support. By late afternoon, the felt is nearly complete. Aizulu unrolls it one final time and spreads it flat on her workshop floor. It is thick and dense and solid, no longer wool but something new, something made. She runs her hands over the surface, feeling the texture. It is good felt, strong felt. The kind of felt that will last for generations. Tomorrow, she will add the patterns. Tomorrow, she will transform this plain gray sheet into a work of art. But for now, the work is done. For now, she can rest. She walks back to her house, her muscles tired but satisfied. The sun is setting behind the western mountains, painting everything that deep and lovely red that gives her village its name. She makes her evening tea. She sits by her window. She watches the stars appear, and slowly, gently, the felt keeper of Kaisel 2 drifts toward rest. Chapter 4. The woman from the capital 3 days pass in the rhythm that Isulu knows so well. She wakes with the sheep. She drinks her salted tea. She works in her workshop, adding the patterns to her felt carpet, cutting shapes from dyed wool and pressing them into the base, rolling and heating and pressing until they become one with the fabric beneath. The patterns emerge slowly, a border of interlocking ram's horns, symbol of prosperity and strength, a central medallion of spiraling waves, symbol of the eternal movement of life. Accents of red and blue and gold, colors that have decorated kirges, felt since before the time of written history. Her hands move with certainty born of decades of practice. She does not need to think about what comes next. Her body knows, her fingers know. The knowledge is deeper than thought, deeper than memory, as much a part of her as her heartbeat. On the fourth morning, something different happens. Isulu is in her workshop, pressing the final patterns into her carpet when she hears a sound she does not expect. A car engine, growing closer, stopping outside her house. Cars are not unknown in Kaisel too. The village is connected to the outside world by a rough road that winds down through the mountains to the main highway. But cars are not common either. Most of the villagers go about their business on foot or on horseback, as their ancestors did. Isulu straightens and goes to the door of her workshop. She sees a small white car parked on the road, dusty from the journey. Climbing out of it is a young woman she has never seen before. The woman is perhaps 30 years old. She wears clothes that mark her as a city person. Jeans and a leather jacket and boots that have never walked on unpaved roads. Her hair is cut short, in a style that would be unusual in the village. Her face is open and curious, looking around at the houses and the mountains and the sheep on the hillside. She sees Isulu and waves. Salam alaikum, the young woman calls, using the traditional Kyrgyz greeting. Peace be upon you. Alaikum salam, Isulu responds, and upon you, peace. The woman walks toward her, her city boots slipping slightly on the uneven ground. When she is close enough to speak without shouting, she introduces herself. My name is Nazira, she says. I have come from Bishkek. I am looking for Isulu Toktogilova. That is my name, Isulu says. Nazira's face lights up with a smile that is genuine and warm. I have found you, she says. I have been looking for you for a long time. They go inside Isulu's house. Isulu makes tea, as any good host must do. They sit across from each other at the small table by the window. The mountains visible behind them, the sound of sheep drifting in from outside. Natsira explains herself. She works for a cultural foundation in Bishkek, the capital city of Kyrgyzstan. The foundation is dedicated to preserving traditional Kyrgyz crafts. They have heard of Isulu, of her skill, of her knowledge. They have heard that she is the last of the true felt keepers. We want to document your work, Natsira says. We want to record everything you know. The techniques, the patterns, the prayers, everything, so that it will not be lost. Isulu listens without interrupting. She sips her tea. She watches the young woman's face, reading the earnestness there, the genuine concern. When Natsira finishes speaking, Isulu was quiet for a long moment. Many people have come to me over the years, she says finally. Tourists who want to take photographs, researchers who want to write papers, journalists who want to tell stories. She pauses, looking out the window at the mountains she has known all her life. But none of them wanted to learn. She continues. They wanted to watch. They wanted to document. They did not want to put their hands in the wool. They did not want to do the work. Nazira meets her eyes. I want to learn, she says. If you will teach me. There is silence in the small house. Outside, a bird calls. The fire in the stove crackles softly. Aisulu studies the young woman. She sees the determination in her face. She sees something else too. Something harder to name. A hunger, perhaps, a need. Where are you from? Aisulu asks, originally. Natsira hesitates before answering. From a village not far from here, she says. I left when I was young. My family moved to Bishkek. I grew up in the city. But you remember the village? Aisulu says. It is not a question. Yes. Natsira's voice is softer now. I remember. My grandmother made felt. I used to watch her when I was very small. She would let me help with the carding sometimes. Aisulu nods slowly. She sees it now. The pulled fiber that can be woven back into the cloth. The work is hard, Aisulu says. It takes years to learn properly. Your hands will become rough. Your back will ache. You will have to be patient. I understand, Natsira says. You will have to stay here in the village. You cannot learn this from books or videos. You must be here. You must live the life. Natsira nods. I am prepared for that. Aisulu looks at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, she smiles. Good, she says. We begin tomorrow. That night, after Nazira has found lodging in the village, after the stars have come out and the mountains have turned to silhouettes against the sky, Aisulu sits alone by her window. She thinks about what has happened, about the woman from the capital who wants to learn, about the possibility that her knowledge might not die with her after all. For the first time in many years, she feels something like hope. The thread continues. The chain is not broken. The felt will go on. She closes her eyes and breathes deeply. The fire crackles. The sheep call to each other across the hillsides. And the felt keeper of Kaisel too, for the first time in a very long time, does not feel alone. Chapter 5. The teaching begins. The first lesson is wool. Aisulu wakes Natsira before dawn, when the sky is still gray and the mountains are shadows against the eastern horizon. The young woman stumbles out of her rented room, still half asleep, wrapped in a borrowed woolen shawl. Come, Aisulu says. The sheep are waking. They walk together to the hillside, where Aisulu's small flock grazes. There are 37 sheep in the flock, each one known to Aisulu by name, by personality, by the particular quality of its wool. This is Alma, Aisulu says, laying her hand on the head of a cream-colored ewe. Her wool is the softest, good for the finest work. And this is Toku's. Her wool is coarser, but very strong, good for the base of carpets. Natsira listens. She reaches out and touches Alma's fleece, feeling the softness that Aisulu described. Feel the difference, Aisulu instructs. Close your eyes. Let your fingers learn. They spend the morning among the sheep. Aisulu teaches Natsira to read the wool with her hands, to feel the variations in texture and strength and length that distinguish one fleece from another. She teaches her how the quality of the wool changes with the season, finest in spring when the winter coat is shed, coarser in autumn after a summer of sun. The work is not what Nazira expected. She thought they would go straight to the workshop, to the actual making of felt. Instead, she finds herself standing in a hillside pasture, her hands in sheep's wool, learning things that seem almost impossibly basic. But she does not complain. She does not rush. She understands, somehow, that this is where it must begin. In the afternoon, they move to the carding. Aisulu gives Nazira her own set of carding paddles, worn smooth with use. She shows her how to hold them, how to place the wool, how to draw the paddles across each other to separate and align the fibers. Not so hard, she says, watching Nazira's first attempts. The wool does not respond to force. It responds to patience. Natsira tries again, and again, and again, and again. By evening, her arms are aching, and her hands are sore. The piles of carded wool around her are uneven and ragged, nothing like the smooth, fluffy clouds that Aisulu produces so effortlessly. But Aisulu only nods. Good, she says. This is how it begins. The days that follow fall into a pattern. They wake before dawn. They visit the sheep. They card wool until their hands are tired. They stop for tea and bread. They card more wool. They eat. They sleep. Natsira's city softness begins to fade. Calluses form on her palms. Her shoulders grow stronger. Her hands begin to learn the rhythm of the work. On the seventh day, Aisulu says, "Today we felt." They go to the workshop. Aisulu shows Natsira how to lay out the carded wool on the reed mat, layer by layer, overlap by overlap. She shows her how to heat the soap water, how to sprinkle it evenly over the wool, and then she shows her how to roll. This is the heart of felt making, Aisulu says. The rolling. Without the rolling, there is no felt. The rolling is what makes the fibers become one. She demonstrates, her old hands pushing and pulling the rolled bundle, her body swaying with the rhythm of the work. Then she steps back and gestures for Nazira to try. Nazira kneels beside the bundle. She places her hands on it. She pushes. Nothing happens the way it should. Her hands slip. Her rhythm is wrong. The bundle moves unevenly, bunching here, stretching there. Aisulu watches without comment. She lets Nazira struggle, lets her find her own way through the difficulty. Only when Nazira stops, frustrated and out of breath, does she speak. "You are using your arms," Aisulu says. "You must use your whole body. The strength comes from the core, from the legs, from the ground beneath you. You must root yourself and let the power flow through you." She demonstrates again. And this time Nazira sees what she did not see before. The way Aisulu's whole body moves as one. The way the motion begins in her feet and travels up through her hips and spine and shoulders before reaching her hands. Try again, Aisulu says. Natsira tries. It is better, but still not right. Again, better. Again, better still. By the end of the day, Natsira has rolled the bundle 1,000 times. Her body aches in places she did not know could ache. Her hands are blistered despite the calluses she has built. Her hair is damp with sweat. But when they unroll the mat, she sees what has happened. The wool has begun to change. It is no longer separate fibers. It is becoming felt. Aisulu looks at her work and nods. Good, she says. Tomorrow we roll again. Natsira laughs, a tired but genuine laugh. She is beginning to understand. This is not something that can be learned in days or weeks. This is something that takes years. A lifetime. The work is never done, never complete. Each day adds a little more skill, a little more understanding. Each day brings you closer to mastery, but never quite there. This is the way it felt. This is the way of the old crafts. This is the way things were done before the world began to rush. That night, Natsira sits with Aisulu in her small house, drinking tea by the light of the fire. Outside, the stars are brilliant, more stars than Natsira has ever seen in the city. Why did you agree to teach me? Natsira asks. You said many people have come before. Why did you say yes to me? Aisulu is quiet for a long moment. She looks out the window at the mountains, dark shapes against the star-filled sky. Because you are hungry, she says finally. And because you remember, your grandmother's hands are in your hands. I can see it. The thread is there. It only needs to be woven back in. Natsira feels tears prick at her eyes. She did not expect this. She came here on an assignment, a professional obligation. She did not expect to find something she had lost, something she did not know she was missing. Thank you, she says, for teaching me. Aisulu shakes her head. Thank your grandmother, she says, and her grandmother, and all the grandmothers before them. They are the ones who kept the knowledge alive. I am only the one who is passing it on. The fire crackles. The stars shine. The sheep are quiet on the hillsides. And in the small house at the edge of Kaisel 2, the felt keeper and her student sit together in the comfortable silence of shared purpose. Chapter 6. The pattern of all things. Weeks pass, then months. The summer heat gives way to autumn cool. The leaves on the few trees in the valley turn gold and red before falling. The sheep's wool grows thicker, preparing for the winter to come. Natsira's hands have changed. They are rougher now, stronger. The blisters have become calluses. The muscles that burned with every motion now move without complaint. She can card a fleece in a morning. She can lay out wool with an even hand. She can roll and roll and roll until the fibers bond together and the felt emerges solid and strong. But she is still learning. There is always more to learn. Today, Isulu says, we work on patterns. They sit together in the workshop, the finished base of a carpet spread between them. It is good felt, made entirely by Nasira's hands, and she feels a quiet pride when she looks at it. But it is plain, a simple gray sheet, beautiful in its way, but lacking the art that makes Kirjai's felt famous around the world. Patterns are the language of felt, Isulu says. They tell stories, they carry meaning, they connect us to our ancestors and to the land. She picks up a piece of dyed wool, deep red like autumn leaves. Watch, she says. Her hands move with fluid grace, cutting the wool into a curved shape. It takes only moments, but when she is done, she holds up a perfect spiral, the ram's horn pattern that appears on almost every piece of traditional Kirghiz felt. This is Kotkor Moyuz, she says, naming the pattern. The ram's horn. It is the oldest pattern we have. It means strength, protection, the never-ending cycle of life. She places the shape on the gray base, pressing it lightly. Then she cuts another horn, identical to the first but reversed, and places it beside the first. Together, they look like a heart, or like two parentheses, embracing something invisible between them. All our patterns come from nature, Isulu continues, from what our ancestors saw around them, the mountains, the rivers, the animals, the sky. She picks up more wool, different colors now. She cuts shapes that Nazira does not recognize, arranging them on the felt like pieces of a puzzle. This is Sumarun, she says, placing a wavy line of blue. The water, life-giving, always moving, the crow's claw. It protects against evil. Natsira watches, trying to memorize everything. The shapes. Manolas. How can anyone remember them all? As if reading her thoughts, Aishulu smiles. You cannot learn them all at once, she says. I have been learning for 70 years, and there are still patterns I do not know. Patterns that died with the old ones who knew them. She hands Nazira a pair of scissors and a piece of red wool. Try, she says. Cut a ram's horn. Nazira takes the wool and scissors. She studies the spirals that Isulu cut, trying to understand the shape. Then she begins to cut. Her first attempt is terrible, lopsided and jagged, nothing like Isulu's perfect curves. Her second is better, still not right, but closer. By her 10th attempt, something begins to emerge that actually looks like the pattern it is meant to be. Better, Isulu says. Keep practicing. Your hands will learn. They work through the afternoon, cutting and placing and adjusting. Isulu teaches Nazira how to press the colored wool into the base, how to wet it and roll it until the fibers bond together, how to create a seamless whole from separate pieces. As they work, Isulu tells stories. She tells the story of the pattern called Tume, the sacred tree that connects the earth to the sky. She tells the story of Shardak itself, how the word means something stitched, something joined, something made of many parts that become one. She tells the story of her own grandmother, who made felt so beautiful that a wealthy man once offered to buy her entire year's production. The grandmother refused. She said the felt was not for selling, it was for giving, it was for passing on. That is the true purpose of the patterns, Isulu says. Not decoration, not art. Connection. Each pattern connects us to those who came before and those who will come after. When you make these patterns, you are having a conversation across time. Natsira listens. She cuts and places and presses. She makes mistakes and corrects them. She learns. By the time the light begins to fade, she has completed one small section of the border. It is not perfect. The curves are not as smooth as Isulu's. The colors do not flow quite as seamlessly into each other. But it is hers. She made it with her own hands. Good, Isulu says, studying her work. This is good. It is the highest praise she has given since Natsira's training began. That night, Natsira lies in her rented room and looks at her hands in the lamplight. They are no longer the hands of a city woman. They are the hands of someone who works with them, someone who makes things. She thinks about what Isulu said, about patterns as conversation, about connection across time. Her grandmother's hands made these same motions. Her grandmother's hand. Women whose names she does not know, whose faces she has never seen. All of them sitting just as she sat today, cutting wool into shapes that carry meaning from one generation to the next. She is part of something larger than herself now, a thread in a fabric that stretches back centuries and forward into the future. This is what she came here to find, though she did not know it when she arrived. This is what she was hungry for: connection, meaning, purpose. She closes her eyes. The sounds of the village settle around her. The distant bleating of sheep, the wind from the mountains, the quiet that only exists far from cities. And slowly, gently, she drifts towards sleep. Chapter 7. The first snow winter comes to Kaisel too. On a morning in November, Natsira wakes to a world transformed. The mountains that were dark and green yesterday are white today, covered in a thick blanket of snow that sparkles in the early light. The ground between the houses is white. The roofs are white. Even the sheep, standing huddled on the hillside, wear mantles of white across their backs. She dresses quickly, adding layers. The wool shawl that Isulu gave her, the felt boots she has learned to make, the heavy coat lined with fleece. Even inside, her breath makes small clouds in the air. She walks to Isulu's house, her boots crunching through the fresh snow. The village is quiet, everyone still inside, fires being stoked, tea being made. Smoke rises from chimneys, straight up in the windless morning, like prayers ascending to the sky. Isulu is already awake, of course. She is always awake before the sun. The fire in her stove is burning hot, and the small house is warm and comfortable. The winter begins, Isulu says, handing Natsira a cup of hot tea. Now the real work starts. Natsira does not understand. She has been working for months, What could be more real than what they have already done? But she learns. In the weeks that follow, she learns. Winter is the time for large projects, the time when the outside work cannot be done, when the sheep are kept close to the village, when the cold drives everyone indoors. It is the time for making the great felt carpets and wall hangings that will take months to complete. Aisulu begins a new carpet, the largest she has attempted in years. It will be a wedding carpet, commissioned by a family in the next village. It must be finished by spring, when the daughter will marry. This carpet will be your final test, Aisulu tells Natsira. You will help me make it, step by step. You will learn the most complex patterns. And when it is done, you will know if you are ready. Ready for what? Natsira asks. Ready to be a felt keeper, Aisulu says. The work is intense. They spend long hours in the workshop, rolling and pressing and cutting and stitching. The carpet grows slowly, layer by layer, pattern by pattern. The border takes shape. The central medallion emerges. Aisulu teaches Natsira the wedding patterns, the pair of doves that represent the bride and groom, the interlocking circles that represent the joining of two families, the tree of life that represents the growth of the new household. Each pattern must be perfect. A wedding carpet is the most important piece a felt maker can create. It will accompany the couple throughout their lives. It will witness their joys and sorrows. It will be passed down to their children and their children's children. No pressure, Natsira jokes one evening, her hands aching from cutting. Aisulu does not smile. The pressure is real, she says. This carpet will outlast us both. What we put into it now will be there forever. Natsira nods and bends back to her work. The winter deepens. The snow piles higher. The days grow shorter and the nights grow longer. Sometimes the village is cut off for days at a time, the road impassable, the world reduced to this valley and these mountains and these few hundred people. Natsira finds that she does not mind. The isolation that would have driven her mad in the city feels different here. It feels like safety, like peace, like a blanket wrapped around her, keeping out everything that does not matter. She works, she learns, she changes. Her hands grow stronger still. Her eyes grow sharper. She begins to see patterns everywhere, in the snow on the mountains, in the smoke rising from chimneys, in the way the light falls through the workshop windows. She begins to understand what Aisulu means when she talks about felt as a living thing. The fibers have energy. The patterns have meaning. The work is not just making. It is communicating. It is praying. It is connecting. On the longest night of the year, when the darkness lasts 16 hours and the stars are so bright they seem close enough to touch, Aisulu tells Nazira a secret. There is one more thing, she says. One thing I have not taught you yet. They are sitting by the fire in Aisulu's house. The wedding carpet is nearly finished now, spread across the workshop floor, waiting for the final touches. What is it? Natsira asks. The blessing, Aisulu says. The words we say when the felt is complete. The prayer that gives it life. She closes her eyes and speaks in a voice that is not quite speaking, not quite singing. Words in the old Kyrgyz that Nasira does not fully understand. Words that rise and fall like the rhythm of rolling, like the rhythm of wool being transformed into something new. When she finishes, she opens her eyes. These words have been passed down for generations, she says, from mother to daughter, from teacher to student. They are the final step, the thing that makes felt more than fabric. Will you teach them to me? Natsira asks. When the time is right, Isulu says. When you are ready. Nazira does not ask when that will be. She has learned patience in these months. She has learned that readiness cannot be forced. It comes when it comes, like the spring, like the melting of snow, like all things in their proper time. The fire crackles, the winter wind howls outside. The sheep huddle together for warmth on the hillside, and in the small house at the edge of Kaisel II, the felt keeper and her student sit together in the deep quiet of the longest night, waiting for the light to return. Chapter 8. The completion spring arrives slowly in the mountains. First, the days grow longer, then the sun grows warmer. Then one morning, Nazira wakes to the sound of water. The snow is melting. Tiny streams run down the hillsides, gathering into larger streams, flowing toward the river that winds through the valley below. The sheep begin to shed their winter wool. They rub against trees and rocks, leaving tufts of fleece behind like gifts. The women of the village gather this wool, adding it to their stores, preparing for the season of felt, making that will begin when the weather warms. And in Aizulu's workshop, the wedding carpet is finished. They have worked on it for 4 months. It measures 12 feet by 8 feet, large enough to cover the floor of a yurt. Every inch is covered with patterns. The border of interlocking ram's horns, the field of spiraling waves, the central medallion with its pair of doves and its tree of life. The colors are deep and rich, madder red, indigo blue, walnut brown, the natural white of the finest fleece. Each color earned its place through hours of dyeing, days of drying, weeks of cutting and placing and pressing. Nazira stands back and looks at what they have made. She cannot quite believe it. She has been so close to the work, so focused on the details, that she has not fully seen the whole until now. It is beautiful. It is the most beautiful thing she has ever been part of making. Aisulu stands beside her, also looking. Her old face is soft with satisfaction. Good, she says. This is good work. Coming from Aisulu, those words mean everything. They prepare the carpet for delivery. They roll it carefully, protecting the patterns, wrapping it in cotton cloth to keep it clean. They load it onto a cart, pulled by one of the village horses, and together they take it to the family who commissioned it. The family receives them with joy. The mother cries when she sees the carpet unrolled. The bride, a young woman with eyes full of hope, touches the patterns with trembling fingers. This will be in my family forever, she says. My grandchildren will see this, my great-grandchildren. Aisulu nods. That is the purpose, she says. That is why we make what we make. They stay for the celebration that follows. There is food and drink and music. The old songs are sung, the ones that have been sung at weddings for generations. The felt carpet is displayed in the place of honor where everyone can admire it. As the evening grows late, Aisulu takes Natsira outside. They stand together under the stars, the sounds of celebration drifting through the night air. You have learned well, Aisulu says. Natsira shakes her head. There is still so much I do not know. There will always be more to learn, Aisulu agrees. That never ends. But you have learned enough to carry on, enough to teach others, enough to keep the tradition alive. She turns to face Nazira, dark eyes reflecting the starlight. I am going to teach you the blessing now, she says, the final words. Are you ready? Nazira feels her heart beating faster. Yes, she says, I am ready. They walk back to Aisulu's house. They sit by the fire as they have sat so many times before. The village is quiet now, the celebration winding down, the night settling into its deepest darkness. Aisulu closes her eyes. She begins to speak the blessing, the ancient words in the old language. She speaks them slowly, clearly, giving Nazira time to listen, to understand, to remember. The words are about transformation, about the gift of making, about the thread that connects all generations, all makers, all pieces of felt from the beginning of time to the end. When she finishes, she opens her eyes. Now you say it, she says. Nazira takes a breath. She speaks the words, hesitantly at first, then with more confidence. The sounds feel strange on her tongue, ancient and powerful. She feels something shift as she speaks them, something subtle but real. When she finishes, Aisulu smiles. It is the first full smile Natsira has seen from her. Good, Aisulu says. Now you are a felt keeper. The fire crackles. The wind whispers outside. The sheep dream their simple dreams on the hillside. And Natsira, once a woman from the city, with soft hands and a vague hunger she could not name, sits in the warmth of the small house and feels something complete inside her. She is home. She is part of something that will go on forever. The thread continues. The pattern is intact. The felt will go on. Chapter 9. The passing of seasons. Time moves differently. Now for Natsira. She no longer measures it in days or weeks or months. She measures it in seasons, in the rhythm of the sheep and the wool and the work, in the turning of the great wheel that has been turning since before there were people to watch it turn. Spring is for gathering. The winter wool is shed and collected. The dyes are prepared. The new projects are planned. Summer is for making. The long days are filled with carding and rolling and pressing. The felt emerges, piece by piece, ready to be decorated. Autumn is for finishing. The patterns are added. The blessings are spoken. The completed works go out into the world to live their long lives. Winter is for teaching. The young women of the village come to learn as Nazira once came to learn. The knowledge passes from hands to hands, from heart to heart. Natsira has been in Kaisel too for 3 years now. Her city life seems like a dream she once had, vague and distant. Her apartment in Bishkek was rented to someone else long ago. Her old job at the Cultural Foundation continues, but she communicates with them by letter, sending reports and photographs, receiving supplies and stipends. She lives in a small house near Aishulu's, a house that was empty and is now a home. She has her own flock of sheep now, 12 animals that she knows by name. She has her own workshop, equipped with the tools of her trade. She has her own life, woven into the fabric of the village. And she has Aisulu. The old woman is 80 now. Her hands have grown slower, though they have not lost their skill. Her eyes have grown weaker, though they still see what others miss. She does less of the heavy work now. The rolling and pressing are left to younger bodies. But she is always there, watching, advising, telling stories. They still work together every day. They drink tea in the morning and tea in the evening. They talk about wool and patterns and the old ways. They sit in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that only comes between people who truly know each other. Nazira has learned to accept that Aisulu will not live forever. This was hard at first, painful in a way she had not expected. But she has come to understand that death is part of the pattern too. Another transformation, another thread being woven into the great fabric of time. The knowledge will continue. That is what matters. The thread will not be broken. On a quiet evening in early autumn, they sit together by Aisulu's fire. The wedding carpet they made years ago is now worn and soft in the home of the couple who commissioned it. They have 3 children. The oldest is learning to walk. "Do you remember when you first came here?" Aisulu asks. "I remember," Natsira says. "I thought I was coming to document your work. I did not know I was coming to find my life." Aisulu smiles, that rare full smile that Natsira cherishes. "The felt found you," she says. "It always finds the ones who need it." They are quiet for a while. The fire crackles. Outside, an owl calls. "I have taught you everything I know," Aisulu says. "All the patterns, all the techniques, all the prayers. You are the felt keeper now, the true keeper of Kaisel too." Natsira feels tears prick at her eyes. She does not speak. There is nothing to say. "There will be others who come to learn," Aisulu continues, "as you came. When they arrive, you will know. You will see the hunger in them. You will teach them as I taught you. And the thread will continue." "I will," Natsira promises. "I will not let it end." Aisulu nods. She closes her eyes. Her breathing slows. For a moment, Natsira thinks she has fallen asleep, but then she speaks again, her voice soft and far away. "The mountains were here before us," she says. "The sheep were here. The grass and the water and the sky, and the wool was here. growing on the backs of the animals, waiting to be transformed. She opens her eyes and looks at Nazira with a clarity that seems almost supernatural. "We are part of something much larger than ourselves," she says. "We come and we go, like the seasons, like the weather, like everything that lives. But the work goes on. The felt goes on. That is the true meaning. That is what matters." Natsira reaches out and takes the old woman's hand. It is warm and dry, lined with age, strong still despite the years. "Thank you," she says, "for everything." Isulu squeezes her hand. "Thank the wool," she says. "Thank the sheep. Thank the mountains and the ancestors." The fire burns low. The stars appear outside the window. The village settles into its nightly rest. And in the small house at the edge of Kazil-2, the old felt keeper and the new sit together, hand in hand, as the great wheel of time continues its eternal turning. Chapter 10. The Way of Rest. Listen now to the sound of peace. The mountains stand where they have always stood, white peaks against the endless blue. The sheep graze where they have always grazed, moving slowly across the slopes, their wool growing thick against the coming cold. The village of Kizil-2 rests in its valley, as it has rested for generations. Smoke rises from chimneys. Children play in the streets. The old ways continue, unchanged and unchanging. In her workshop, Nazira is rolling felt. Her hands move in the ancient rhythm, push and pull, push and pull. The wool is transforming beneath her fingers, becoming something new, something lasting. She counts as she rolls. 100, 200. The rolling is prayer. The work is connection to everything that came before and everything that will come after. Isulu passed away 2 years ago, on a winter night when the snow was falling softly and the stars were hidden behind clouds. She went peacefully in her sleep with a smile on her face. The village mourned her. The mountains mourned her. The sheep seemed to mourn her too, calling mournfully across the hillsides for days. But the felt continues. The knowledge lives on. The thread was not broken. Natsira is 40 now. Her hair is beginning to show strands of gray. Her face is lined from years of sun and wind. Her hands are calloused and strong, the hands of a true felt keeper. She has students of her own now. 3 young women who come to her workshop every day to learn. She teaches them as Isulu taught her, with patience, with repetition, with stories and patterns, and the slow accumulation of skill. The Cultural Foundation in Bishkek has documented everything. The techniques are recorded. The patterns are preserved. The blessings are written down, though they are still passed from voice to voice, from heart to heart. But the true knowledge, Natsira knows, cannot be captured in documents. The true knowledge is in the hands, in the rhythm, in the feeling of wool becoming felt beneath your fingers. This can only be passed on the old way, from teacher to student, from generation to generation, from one pair of hands to another. The sun is setting now over the mountains. The light is turning gold, then amber, then the deep red that gives the village its name. Nazira's students have gone home for the day. She is alone in her workshop, finishing the last rolls of the day's work. She stops and straightens. Her back aches, but it is a familiar ache, the ache of good work, the ache of purpose. She walks to the door and looks out at the mountains. They are the same mountains that Isulu watched for 80 years. They will be the same mountains that Nazira's students watched for their own 80 years, and beyond that, and beyond that. But some things remain. The mountains remain. The sheep remain. The ancient craft of making felt from wool remains. Nazira breathes deeply. The air smells of grass and wood smoke, and the clean cold scent of snow from the peaks above. This is home. This is peace. This is enough. She closes her workshop for the night. She walks to her small house. She makes her evening tea, the strong black tea with mare's milk and salt. She sits by her window and watches the last light fade from the sky. The stars appear, one by one. The same stars that Isulu watched. The same stars that generations of felt keepers have watched, going back through time to the very beginning. Nazira closes her eyes. She feels her breath slow. She feels her body relax. She's part of something larger than herself, a thread in a fabric that stretches back centuries and forward into the future, a link in a chain that has never been broken. The knowledge continues. The craft continues. The thread goes on, and that is all that matters. That is enough. The fire crackles softly. The sheep settle for the night on the hillsides. The village sleeps under the watchful gaze of the mountains, and the felt keeper of Kaisel too, guardian of an ancient craft, drifts peacefully toward rest. Epilogue. The thread continues. And so, we come to the end of our story. But it is not really an end. It is a continuation. A passing of the thread from one hand to another, from one generation to the next, somewhere in the mountains of Kyrgyzstan. The sheep are grazing. Their wool is growing, soft and warm, ready to become something new. Somewhere in a village called Kaisel too, a woman is rolling felt. Her hands move in the ancient rhythm. Push and pull, push and pull. The fibers are tangling, bonding, becoming one. Somewhere in a small workshop, a student is cutting patterns from dyed wool. The shapes are spirals and waves, and the horns of mountain sheep. The colors are red and blue and the natural cream of fleece. The knowledge flows from hand to hand, from heart to heart, from the ancient past to the endless future. This is the way of felt. This is the way of the old crafts. This is the way that human beings have always passed on what matters, not through books or videos, but through the patient teaching of one generation to the next. You are part of this too, in your own way. Everything you know that matters you learned from someone. Everything you know that matters, you will teach to someone else. We are all threads in the great fabric. We are all links in the endless chain. Let yourself rest now. Let your breathing slow. Let your body relax into whatever surface holds you. Think of the mountains, white peaks against blue sky, snow that never melts, silence that has lasted for millennia. Think of the sheep, moving slowly across green hillsides, their wool growing thick and warm, their simple lives untroubled by the worries that trouble us. Think of the felt, fibers tangling together, chaos becoming order. The mountains are watching over you. The sheep are grazing nearby. The felt is wrapping around you like a blanket, warm and soft and strong. There's nothing you need to do, nothing you need to think about, nothing you need to worry about or plan for or remember. Just rest. Just breathe. Just be. The thread continues. It has always continued. It will continue long after we are gone. We are part of something much larger than ourselves, something ancient and beautiful and true. Let that knowledge comfort you. Let it hold you. Let it carry you gently into sleep. The felt keeper of Kaisel too is at rest. The mountains are at rest. The sheep are at rest. And now, you too can rest. Breathe slowly, in and out, like the rolling of wool, like the rhythm of ancient work. The stars are shining over the mountains. The snow is glowing silver in the moonlight. The village is quiet. The world is at peace. Sleep now. Rest well.